Once you've reached the end of the game, by which I mean you've gone far beyond the credit roll and you've maxed out all your equipment pieces, you'll come to the harsh realization that all that's left to do is to augment your armor and weapons. While armor augmentation is as straightforward a process as it could be, augmenting your weapons is anything but. In today's episode, I want to shed some light on the options you have available and how to make an informed decision that will benefit your overall setups. Let's get the most obvious question out of the way first. What exactly is augmentation? It's a new upgrade system that essentially unlocks further upgrades for an already maxed out piece of equipment. Let's take a Rarity 8 armor piece for example, which will max out after 4 levels. Using a gleaming Streamstone plus some other required materials, you can augment an armor piece, which in turn will allow you to now level it up to its true maximum. In this particular case, that's level 11. You can actually augment an armor piece even before you start leveling it, but it doesn't make a difference if you level it to its natural cap first and then augment it, or if you choose the path to augment it out of the box and then level it to its true maximum. Upgrading weapons is a bit more involved, and if RNGesus absolutely execrates you, like yours truly, it can be a very draining task to even get started. Unlike armor pieces, your weapon has to be maxed out in terms of upgrades before you can even start with augmentation. Assuming you already have the stones plus whatever other materials you need, you will be able to expand your weapon's capabilities in a variety of ways. You can increase your attack, affinity, defense, decoration slots, and even add health regeneration to your weapon. With the exception of defense, I can argue that all of these have their uses, which we'll go through in more detail later in this video. Just as a quick spoiler though, defense is not good, especially when it comes to how arduous a task it can be to even get to the point where you can augment your weapon. Which leads us right into, how do you get started on this process in the first place? In terms of requirements, it's a very simple process. All you have to do is to farm tempered investigations. If all you're interested in is to augment your armor, that's pretty much all there is to it. Since the endgame heavily focuses around tempered monsters anyway, you'll be swimming in those sooner or later. When it comes to the stones you need to augment your weapons, you'll need to be doing tempered investigations of threat level 2 or above, well, on paper at least. In reality you'll be farming tempered elder dragons 24/7, meaning tier 3 exclusively, the exception being some special event quest like the tempered devil joe we just had. But going back to the tempered elder dragons, the reason for farming those are the drop rates and the inherent randomization of the stones you'll get. First of all, there are 2 types of Streamstones for weapons. They drop as solid Streamstones that, upon appraisal, turn into a warrior Streamstone, which are required to augment Rarity 6 and Rarity 7 weapons, and then there's the shining Streamstone, turning into a hero Streamstone to augment Rarity 8 weapons. Rarity 6 weapons can be augmented 3 times, Rarity 7 weapons twice and Rarity 8 weapons just once. The cost also differ between the rarities as each augmentation type has a fixed cost of zenny and materials per rarity. If we were to just focus on the Streamstone requirements for now, as those are by far the rarest items to come by, it costs 1 warrior Streamstone for 1 augmentation of Rarity 6, 2 for Rarity 7, and 1 hero Streamstone for Rarity 8. To max out augmentation of a weapon, you therefore need 3 warrior Streamstones for Rarity 6, 4 for Rarity 7, and 1 hero Streamstone for Rarity 8. Doesn't sound that bad, right? No, it's not just bad, it's much worse than you could imagine. Warrior Streamstones have a 3% chance of dropping on Tempered Threat level 2 investigations, while Tempered Threat level 3 investigations bump this up to 12%, while adding the Hero Streamstones as a 3% chance, hence why you should focus on farming Tempered Elder Dragons. You might argue that it's not like previous Monster Hunter installments were all that generous with G-rank items like mantles and the likes either, and yes, you're absolutely right. They could be a real pain to farm, yet they were also rolled across all available kill, capture and break rewards. Warriors and Hero Streamstones are limited to the bonus rewards of a Tempered Investigation only, meaning that this 3 or 12% chance can only be rolled within 2 to 5 slots per hunt, which decreases the chances of getting one significantly in comparison, but it still doesn't stop there. The Streamstones are also weapon specific and grouped up in pairs. Sword covers great and long swords, axe covers slash and charge axes, range covers light and heavy bowguns, and so on. This inevitably brings us to gacha levels of randomization, where you not only need to be lucky enough to even get that solid or shining Streamstone drop rolled into the bonus rewards of a Tempered Investigation, but you now face yet another roll of a 1 in 7 chance to get that stone you actually need. Couple this with the fact that you basically will only be fighting a handful of monsters tops over and over, meaning tempered elder dragons, you're running a very high risk of burning out on Monster Hunter World. This system can turn a game that you love to bits into the most boring and frustrating experience you might have ever come across. For reference, I've been almost exclusively hunting tempered elder dragons for over 100 hours now, bar the weeklies and event quests of course. And it wasn't until after I had been hunting 56 tempered Devil Joes back to back via the event quest that I finally got a Hero Streamstone axe. Without that quest, I'd probably still be looking for that stone. If you play MMOs or gacha games and are already numb to these types of very low drop rates, I'm sure you'll be just fine here, but to anyone else, I highly recommend to not worry about these stones and to simply play the game for fun, as it is going to drain your will to play this game very quickly. Let's take a quick little breather, as just going through that last segment was quite draining and demoralizing, so I assume that not too many people will even get to this point. Even so, as I was writing this, I decided to restructure my script, as the upcoming segment originally was sitting above the Streamstone segment. After proofreading my script, I felt that it was much more important to point out what kind of task you're looking at here as early as possible, luring you in with how awesome weapon augmentation is, and to then break your wall right after that didn't feel right. With all the bad stuff out of the way, let's get to the actual benefits of weapon augmentation. Which augmentation you choose is highly dependent on both your playstyle and the setup you're going to be using that weapon with. A holistic assessment of your setup should also encompass which hunter tools you'll be using with that weapon, if your cat's gonna be there or not, and what setup the cat will be using if it's there. I obviously won't be able to go through all of the available customization options, as the sky is pretty much the limit here. But I at least want to provide a few concepts as examples within the available options that might help you with your decision making when it comes to using these elusive stones for an augmentation. Health Regen is by far the best augmentation in my opinion, especially on Rarity 6 and Rarity 7 weapons, as you can stack them. The health regeneration is applied on every single hit that connects. The more damage you dish out per hit, the more health you regenerate. For slash axes, it's applied to almost all of your dealt damage, including the small amped explosions. The zero-sum discharge finishers, both normal and from an actual amount, are the only attacks I know of that don't heal you. The percentage of health gained from the damage you dealt seems to be weapon dependent. For instance, 2 health regen augmentations on both the Tsitsiaku Longsword and the Valhazak Slash Axe didn't work out to be equal on a damage dealt to health gained ratio. In this test, the Longsword gave me 16%, while the Slash Axe gave me 14% in Axe mode and 13% in Sword mode. In both tests, affinity was at 0% and no skills or charms were equipped. I assume that this is based on attack speed, motion values and so on to even out the gains across all weapon types, but that is just an assumption. Also, please bear in mind that the numbers I just presented were achieved through counting pixels, so they're not the most accurate either. The point was just to showcase that the health gain does differ between weapon types. If your damage output is a little low and you want to drain more life, you can equip some medicine jewels as they enhance this effect even further. For Rarity 6 weapons, I would say stick with just 2 health regen augmentations and use either attack, decoration slots, or affinity on the last one, depending on what you need. As Rarity 8 weapons can only be augmented once, health regen might not be the best case scenario. The whole idea, in my opinion at least, is sloppy play that allows you to stay up in a monster's grill without any to care of what the monster's going to do next. With just 1 health augmentation, you're most likely not recovering enough on most Rarity 8 weapons to take the same brain-dead approach. That being said, it's still a pretty powerful tool, so even though you will have to be more aware of what's going on, it will still do its job in terms of healing. Frankly speaking, I used my Hero Streamstone axe to augment my Axe of Demons with health regen. The reason here is that the damage output of that weapon is so high anyway, that I make enough life back either way. So in this case, the health regen on this Rarity 8 weapon allows me to never have to heal over the course of a solo hunt, and I of course put that into practice. Once again, you should really take every single aspect of your setup into account before you make a decision on weapon augmentation. If you can logically justify it, it's most likely the correct choice for you to make. As I said in the beginning, defense seems useless to me. The effect is just too small at 10 defense per defense augmentation on your weapon, plus that chance to take decreased damage. It's just a chance after all. When you then take into account that the whole idea is being able to take more hits during a hunt, I find health regen to fit this mold a lot better. If you can justify using this augmentation, more power to you of course, but I just can't see this upgrade covering the cost of using a Streamstone. The first affinity upgrade is perfectly viable as it will boost your weapon's affinity by 10%. Any weapon with negative affinity, like the Diablos and Deviljho weapons for example, benefit greatly from this, especially if your setup is already working towards a high crit rate. Bear in mind though that subsequent upgrades, which of course is limited to Rarity 6 and 7 weapons, only boost affinity by 5% each. So a Rarity 6 weapon can only be boosted by a total of 20% and a Rarity 7 one by 15%. This can still be an interesting approach to go with, as it would for example put the Lumus Mesher 3 at a 35% affinity boost without any skills attached to it. Just with Weakness Expert level 3 you'd be hitting weak spots for an 85% chance of critical hits consistently. If you combine this with crit status in Free Element 3, you're now looking at a weapon that all of a sudden has become an insanely proficient blast applying powerhouse. Okay, powerhouse might be an exaggeration, the raw value on that weapon is still rather sad after all. But you get the point. Decoration slot augmentations are really only interesting if you're absolutely happy with the base stats of your weapon already and would just love to get another slot on your weapon. There are some limitations to this feature though. You cannot, for example, upgrade pre-existing slots. On the slash axis for example, and I believe this holds true for every weapon type, there isn't a single weapon with 3 separate slots, so you will always have to create a new slot first with that initial augmentation, no matter what. So this is how it works. The first augmentation will add a slot for a small gem, the second augmentation will upgrade this to a medium-sized slot, and the third one will make it a big slot for the big jewels. This ultimately means that no matter which rarity you're augmenting, and regardless if you're augmenting for decoration slots once, twice or 3 times, you will only be able to create 1 decoration slot. I can't really think of any specific examples that would benefit from this augmentation, but there's no doubt if you're missing just 1 slot for something that would outdo either attack affinity or health regen, this certainly is an augmentation to consider. Lastly, even though it's the first option within the game, we have Attack Increase, which can be pretty good by itself. After removing the bloat values, it basically reveals itself as a flat boost to attack power of 5 points per attack augmentation. Rarity 6 weapons for example can thus get plus 15 attack. Not too shabby. I would only really use up to 2 slots for this though. Something like the Barroth Grinder for example, which already has high raw, coupled with either 2 health regen or just 1 health regen and an affinity upgrade to get it from -20 to -10%. I actually did use 2 attack increase on my Dark Devourer, so there's that. Similar as with what I said on health regen, I don't really see too big of a benefit if it was used on the one and only available slot on Rarity 8 weapons, but once again, your setup and intentions are key. If you think it's worthwhile and you can justify using this stone for that purpose, I'm not here to talk you out of it. Before I sign out, the effects of augmentations do not differentiate between weapons or rarities. So for example, Affinity Increase will always give plus 10% affinity on your first augmentation, regardless of rarity or weapon type. The only difference comes in form of the required materials, which only differs based on rarity. This means that a health regen upgrade for a Rarity 7 hammer for instance, has the exact same cost requirements as a health regen upgrade for a Rarity 7 longsword. The costs also don't increase, so if you were to upgrade attack 3 times on a Rarity 6 weapon, the required materials, stones and zenny will not change between upgrades. I hope this helped some of you, and I also hope that the hunt after those stones doesn't burn you out on the game. If you have any questions, corrections and the likes, please leave them in the comments and I'll try to address them as best as I can. If you liked the video, I'd of course greatly appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, I'd be just as grateful for a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback after all. If you did enjoy it though and you haven't subscribed already, why not consider subscribing as well? I'm pretty sure less than 5% of people watching this actually make it all the way to the end of this video, so I really want to thank you for sticking with me on this one. Thank you for watching. My name's Sasa, and I'll see you next time.